Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the July 5th, 2023 meeting of the Baldwin County Commission at 10 a.m. At this time, I'd like to have Chaplain Mel Packer from the Baldwin County Sheriff's Department lead us in the invocation, followed by the pledge from Commissioner Ball. Thank you.
Good morning. If we could bow together. Heavenly Father, first of all, we're thankful that today we woke up with breath in our lungs and that you have called us to this day and at this time for a specific purpose. We thank you, Lord, that you're going with us, each one throughout this day. You said in your word, Lord, that you would lead, guide, and direct our steps. And so we pray, God, that everything that's said and done in this meeting and throughout the county, Lord, would be done according to your will and your plan. We bless, Lord, our commissioners today. Lord, give them your mind, your wisdom as they deliberate over these issues that will be presented. Lord, bless our county employees. Bless our law enforcement and first responders. Lord, bless this county. We pray, God, that you would continue to give us favor and abundance. And Lord, today, most importantly, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. We ask it in his name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. All right, we'll get started. The first thing on the agenda is adoption of the minutes from the June the 2023 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion made by Commissioner Underwood, seconded by Commissioner Ball to accept the minutes. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Next is the financial administrative payment of the bills. Commissioner Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve payment of the bills and distribution of taxes, which are listed in the Baldwin County accounts payable payments.
Second.
Got a motion made by Commissioner Underwood, seconded by Commissioner Ball. Any further discussions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. All right, Mr. Brundle.
Yes, sir. First, we have the consent agenda. Some items of note from the work session. Basically, all the items were accepted until you get to the CR planning and zoning, where we took off CR2 through CR8, which will be considered under other staff recommendations. So under planning and zoning, the only one you have for consent is CR1. Other than that, the consent agenda is as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adopt our consent agenda with the exception of the items that were pulled CR2 through CR8.
Okay.
I will second it.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Ball, seconded by Commissioner Underwood to accept the consent agenda with the exceptions as listed, which is CR2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. 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 The ayes have it. All right.
Yes, sir. We have no other presentations. Under public hearings, we have actually two, but both are related to the same project. We have a rezoning for Retirement Systems of Alabama, which is the ER1 case number Z23-8, and also we have ER2, which is the PRD for case number PRD 23-1, the Oaks of the Colony, and we have various speakers signed up to speak at the public hearing.
Do we need to take up the CR2 to CR8 first?
Matthew indicated that we're going to do them both together at the same time. Is that correct?
No, he's talking about.
Do you want to do them after we get done with the public hearing and all that?
Oh, we have that under the other staff recommendations.
Okay, other staff, okay.
Right, yeah,
all right,
we'll move it to
okay.
other staff.
All right.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm mistake. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Matthew.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, at this time, we have zoning cases Z23-8 and PRD 23-1. We just title it generally the RSA property. This is a request to rezone 7.2 acres from OR to RSF1 and also consider a planned residential development site plan on the same property. I want to emphasize early on that these are two zoning cases, even though what's submitted will look a little bit like a subdivision. A subdivision approval will come later, going through the Planning Commission process. We'll talk about the PRD, but that's a zoning site plan overlay approval. I also want to emphasize that this, as a zoning case, is nuanced. It's a case that has many opinions both direction, a lot of debatable information in it, and staff has weighed this out, and we certainly understand that the Planning Commission doesn't always see things at the exact same perspective, and we understand that the County Commission may not as well, and so that's the nature of what we do. So again, the current property is currently zoned OR, Outdoor Recreation District. The applicant's request, again, is to rezone to RSF1 to allow for a proposed 6-lot PRD and later subdivision. This property is located south of Battles Road and east of Scenic Highway 98. Just a quick overview, when we go through this process, a property usually has an existing zoning. And then if someone wants to do a PRD is only allowed with certain types of underlying zoning. So often they first have to request a rezone. In this case, they're requesting a rezone to RSF1. And then on top of that will be this PRD overlay, which is a zoning site plan approval that essentially locks in what can be done on this newly rezoned piece of property, or this proposed to be rezoned piece of property. This is the locator map and site map. I think there are some really important things to note here. You can see that this is part of an existing golf course that is entirely zoned OR, outdoor recreation. You'll notice that there is residential to the west. You can see that in the yellow on the map. You'll notice quite a bit of purple to the east, and that's because that's the Fairhope municipal limits, and they have, of course, their own zoning categories within those municipal limits. These are some pictures of the subject property. We're going to move through these pretty quickly. We can certainly come back to any of these at any time. This is just an aerial perspective of the piece of land that we're talking about, and you can see the golf course facilities on either side. All right, the current rezoning OR, you can see the minimum standards there. Again, this is all in the staff report, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. You can see the requested minimum standards for RSF1. One of the biggest factors is, of course, that it does allow single-family dwellings on that property, and it has a minimum lot area of 30,000 square feet. All right, so let's talk about the PRD here a little bit. Again, just want to emphasize that this is not a subdivision approval. They'll have to come back for that approval later. One of the allowable underlying zonings for a PRD is RSF1, which is what they're requesting. The minimum size of a PRD is 5 contiguous acres, which they meet here by having 7.2 acres. So there have been some previous proposals to this property, and we're not going to discuss all of them. We're going to discuss the ones that took place in the near past. There was previously a request for RSF2 zoning and a submittal for a 10-lot single-family subdivision. Or that was proposed, that was what was going to be proposed with that RSF2 rezoning. Staff recommended a denial of that rezoning, and then the applicant withdrew that request prior to it coming before the Planning Commission for a full public hearing. And so you can see that proposal on the board. In the staff's recommendation, we highlighted our concerns that led to our recommendation of denial, and the applicant submitted a new application, which was this request that you're hearing today for RSF1 with the PRD overlay, and reduce it to a 6-lot single-family division. And we'll discuss some of the specifics of that here. This is a site data summary and a development summary for the site. You can see some of the minimum lot sizes, and we'll look at those a little bit more later. And so this table right here shows their original 523 submittal, which you see on the left. And then we did receive a new submittal on Friday, 6/30, which you see on the right. And I want to explain the difference with the submittal. Some of the public comments that we had really through this whole process related to the width of the road, and we had a condition on our approval saying that we understood that there were some concerns about the road width, and that would be evaluated in the subdivision process. Well, the applicant kind of wanted to remove that concern, and so submitted this revised proposal with what I believe is a 20-foot wide travel way, and then this corresponding table to show what had to change to make that happen. And so we asked them to list out all the changes in terms of lot area, common area, buffer area, retention area, and you can see it was really de minimis changes to the right in terms of how these lot size changed as part of this proposal. Okay, so PRDs allow for flexibility and creativity in planning developments. And so they start with that basic RSF1, which you see those minimums for RSF1, 30,000 square feet, minimum lot of 100 feet, and then those setbacks and that minimum density. What a PRD says is you have to hold the density constant, but then you're allowed to play with the other variations. So on the right, you see their PRD request. And they do have 2 lots below the minimum required 30,000 square feet for RSF1, and so that's one of their PRD proposals. Their minimum lot width, they're still exceeding that because these are our larger lots. And then they're proposing smaller setbacks as well, 10-foot front, 15-foot rear, and 10-foot side. Now, there are some places where they're proposing an additional some additional depth to account for, to add some buffer to the golf fairways. But you can see that they're remaining beneath the required minimum density. So PRDs are kind of used to exchange reduced lot dimensions for a higher quality development that would otherwise maybe not be permissible under the zoning ordinance. So the approving body, and that's y'all, and that's the Planning Commission who makes a recommendation, decides whether the developer's exchanging sufficient quality for the reduced lot dimensions they are requesting. Examples of what a developer sometimes offers to exchange is more open space, some amenities, landscaping, walking paths, things of that nature. So they do have some minimum open space requirements. That's 20%, which amounted to 1.44 acres, and they're providing 2.55 acres. 50% of the required open space must be usable, and we checked their calculations on that, and we show approximately 0.78 usable acres of open space, which is just exceeds the 50% of the required open space. The landscape plan, they have submitted a detailed landscape plan. That was one of the early deficiencies with their initial proposal, as we felt a lot of the existing landscaping would be eliminated. In this case, you can see that there are 2 trees that will be removed, but they've added this note to the plan that says no trees other than invasive species or those labeled to be removed shall be disturbed now as part of the development. You can see the utility letters that they've submitted. There was some concern with Fairhope. We know that they've had some water issues, and we checked directly with the mayor to make sure this letter still stood. This was right before the Planning Commission meeting, and they confirmed that it does. Their proposed drainage, they've submitted a drainage report, and their detention facility, again, that will all be evaluated further during the subdivision stage. They had to submit documents regarding the covenants and conditions, and we looked at these and we did have some concerns, and so we asked that they add the following note to their landscape plan that says, with the exception of trees specifically identified as an invasive species on the site plan and the trees specifically noted for removal on the site plan, no trees with above a specific diameter can be removed except for with approval of the Architectural Review Committee. And we clarified that the power of the Architectural Review Committee would not exist for the purposes of this development until it had been turned over to the residents of the colony at the Grand, to clarify that. The rest of these slides are in your staff report. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those. There were no wetlands found on the site. So that explains the PRD, and now we're going to talk about the rezoning factor summary. We do look at 11 different factors. We understand that these are subjective factors, and they're kind of like a balancing test you've seen in the slide where we compare zoning and subdivisions, and so each one gets balanced out by each of you as the final decision makers. So this first one is, number one, is the requested change compatible with the existing development pattern and the zoning of nearby properties? Early on, we noted that we were, in essence, going to ignore the development pattern in Fairhope because recently Fairhope has approved a lot of higher density residential developments at the outskirts of this. But we recognize that this is unincorporated Baldwin County, and as such, we were going to look at the development pattern within that unincorporated area. We also note that compatibility looks at the potential intrusionary aspects of a proposed rezoning. And we did note that there are some concerns that wedging a residential development between two active golf fairways does have some intrusionary qualities, which was why we had that original recommendation of denial. When they reduced from 6 to 10 lots, again, as staff, we're weighing these things out, trying to make a decision and recommendation. We felt that they had sufficiently abated that concern, but we do note that that is a concern that continues to be raised through this project, and in part because this buffer has existed in this form within the community for decades now. And so we understand why some folks still feel that this would have an intrusionary impact on the community. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on all of these. We've highlighted different aspects as to why the staff recommended approval. Again, looking at this minimum lot size of the surrounding residential properties, we felt like it was pretty comparable. We would note that it does not technically conform with the current master plan, and this is due in large part to the way the current master plan, the old master plan, works. And so we didn't give this a lot of weight, but we did note that it does encourage denial. We looked at whether or not there were existing and planned public improvements or potential traffic issues. Again, on both of these, we felt like it recommended approval. Here's a relatively recent traffic count that was done there. We have less than 2,000 vehicles on that road, and considering this is only 6 residential homes, it'll have a very minimal impact on traffic on that road itself. We looked at consistent with development patterns in the area and proposed logical expansion to adjacent zoning. Again, given the immediate proximity to an outdoor recreational facility, staff believes a residential zoning on the subject property would require special care to ensure that a transition between residential and those recreational uses. Special considerations would involve changes to the existing golf course, landscape buffers, unique site layouts. And with the accompanying site plan now, they're proposing changes to those golf holes that we felt, again, abated some of those concerns that we had, and therefore changed staff's recommendation to approval. And then we do note here, though, that that's subject to the health, safety, and welfare considerations in Factor 10, which you'll hear about shortly. This is a document provided by the applicant showing the comparable densities in the area. In terms of timing, we didn't feel like this factor either encouraged or discouraged the recommendation. In terms of environmental conditions, early on we had a lot of concerns because we felt like most of the trees would be removed from the site. Again, historically, this has been a significant location for a lot of tree cover in the area, and then the applicant submitted a revised plan to address that. So we felt like that resolved our concerns. So this brings us to number 10, which is one of the more hotly debated questions, and this is, will the proposed change adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the county and the vicinity? And this is a golf course. We as staff do not pretend to be golf course design experts, so we relied heavily on the applicant's golf course architect. And we asked them, is this going to present safety hazards? And a quick note here is they responded, and this is a copy paste from the email, the risk of errant golf balls in the Oaks is no greater than one might experience on other recently developed residential golf course communities. We note, however, that there are differing opinions on this, and therefore we defer heavily to the County Commission and the Planning Commission in evaluating those opinions. One thing I did know, and I didn't notice this until the presentations for the Planning Commission is that the actual official letter from the architect did modify their statement slightly. And I do want to note that in his letter, he did change it to say on similar land. And maybe they can comment as to the significance of that statement. But I felt like that was a change worth noting versus what had initially been submitted to us in the email. Clyde Johnson and Mr. Herdzin will both be available via WebEx primarily to answer any questions that you all have, if you have questions about the opinions that they've proffered in this case. I do want to note that Mr. Herdzin, in his most recent email, did recommend some additional plantings specifically, and so for that reason, we have highlighted that and added that as a condition that his recommendations be included as part of this approval if the Planning Commission chooses to approve. They did recommend several changes. Well, they have fairway buffers displayed to provide some buffer. They also added an additional building setback on the individual lots for the fairway buffer to help reach 200 feet. They also recommended a number of changes to the golf course itself to impact how golfers hit the ball. They've added some signage to the common area so that way folks know if they're just picnicking in there that there is a chance that a golf ball could land in that area. We did want to note that there's been a history here of how this has flowed through the city of Fairhope. I'm not going to repeat all this, but it was proposed in Fairhope first as a rezoning and then later as an unzoned subdivision. In both cases, the Planning Commission recommended ultimately it did not move forward, and with the subdivision ultimately got recommended for denial. But that slide is included in there. You can see staff comments there. So staff's recommendation was to approve the PRD to the Planning Commission with the following caveats: that the Planning Commission and County Commission evaluate the expert opinions provided related to the safety risks associated with errant golf balls, and then the conditions that we've already discussed regarding the road and the additional plantings from Michael Herdzin. The Planning Commission recommended a denial in a vote of 4-3. On the rezoning, we have the same recommendation from staff. The Planning Commission recommended denial on a vote to 5-2. Mr. Chairman, we recommend that this public hearing be open for both of them simultaneously, and then we'll ask that you all vote on the PRD first, and then depending on that vote, staff will have additional instructions after that.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and we'll open up the, go ahead, I'll open up the public hearing. I guess we'll do it by the PRD first. Would you rather do it with PRD first?
If we could just open them up simultaneously, but then we'll vote for the PRD first.
Okay, all right, we'll start with the case number Z23-8, Retirement System of Alabama's rezoning. All right. We have anyone signed up?
Yes, sir. First up, we have Melissa Curry to speak.
All right.
And Mr. Chairman, before she speaks, I guess I just want to clarify, Mr. Chairman, you're opening the public hearings for both of these matters, ER1 and ER2? Okay.
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of our applicant and the applicant for, or our client and the applicant for this project. We have a presentation prepared, and I'm going to just highlight some of the changes between the Planning Commission meeting and this meeting, just because for brevity. And I'd like to begin by saying that we have been relying on expert advice, expert testimony, but I also want to point out the expertise contained within our own local staff here in our planning department. They are the experts in our ordinances, our local laws, our local conditions, and in growth management in our county. And their recommendation is for approval. And we also have our experts that are joining us via WebEx that have given us expert advice on design based on each one of them's 50-plus year careers in golf course design. So we feel like we have relied on the expertise of those that really have the best input. If you would advance, please. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got the slide advanced. So we are going to talk about what the differences were. And what I hope that we can focus on really is the facts and the expertise that's been presented, and not as much on the emotion. So we, as Matthew has so greatly presented before us today, we did have a conceptual master plan that was presented, and then we made just a slight modification that we gave to the staff on Friday to increase the pavement width on the road from 16 feet to 20, and then we also increased the front setback from 10 to 12. So these were very minor changes as Matthew went through. This was the original concept plan, and you can see that overlaid onto the aerial so that you have a better idea of how this fits into the existing condition. So this master plan was based on some really specific design considerations, and the main thing that we wanted to do was preserve the existing trees. So the big change that we did from our first submission in February to the one in May was shortened up the road. We've got it winding through, going around and avoiding all of the trees with the exception of the 2 pine trees, one to be in the roadway and one in the stormwater retention area. So those were our main design considerations, and this is an enlargement so that you can see how the home sites have potentially been sited very carefully so that it creates an area of refuge in between the houses. So the intent would be the homes would face each other. They're pulled close to the road, which is why we're asking for a smaller front setback to, again, increase that distance away from the fairway. And then the buffers that are provided with an additional 25-foot setback off of the buffer that's already built in to the property in the rear to make sure that those homes are pulled away from the fairway. The roadway section was submitted on Friday with the increased pavement width. So this meets the IFC code and is consistent with other types of development in the area. We're also proposing a gated entrance. So some of the concerns that were raised at the Planning Commission meeting were that there would be some conflict between vehicular traffic entering the site and golf cart traffic that would be going along, or pedestrian on the golf cart path. So with the gated entrance and a divided entrance, we're accomplishing some important goals by preserving existing trees in that median area, giving golf carts a place to stop if they need to between the 2 lanes going in and out. And then, of course, the gate would require cars either coming in or going out of the subdivision to have to stop and wait for the gate to open. So the cars will be either at a stop or very, very low speed. So this should have assuaged all of the concerns that we had posed to us at the Planning Commission meeting. And we do meet although these roads are proposed to be private, we do meet the requirement in the design manual for an access lane, which allows for pavement width and right-of-way width to be the same. So as part of this proposed roadway width, we also increased the width of the access and utility easement that runs adjacent to the pavement to 10 feet from 7.5 feet. So there's a total of 40 feet of access width, which would be equivalent to a right-of-way. We do have Mr. Clyde Johnson, who has been engaged in the process of making recommendations on
Excuse me, but your 5 minutes are up on that. You know, we do 5 minutes, you know, because you're representing the group, you know, so we're limiting the time.
I do have some important analysis, if I could, because there's been concerns about this being different than other ways that the golf course has been developed. And I can go through those quickly if you all would allow me to. We would really appreciate it as the applicant.
You'll allow it?
I'm okay.
Okay.
It's up to y'all.
Okay, so
How many, tell me, how many minutes you think? I'm trying to keep this, I want to make it even for both sides.
yes, sir, thank you so much. I appreciate that. If you would just, can we take an extra 5 minutes?
Not 5, I'll give you another 3 minutes.
Another 3. Thank you so much. So Mr. Johnson will speak later and will be available to answer questions, but we are relying on his expertise to give us guidance as to what changes need to be made to the fairways, and we've agreed to do that. I wanted to point out how the Lakewood development has happened. So this is the overall master plan of the golf course, and you can see that there are large parcels that are undeveloped at the time with the master plan, and that's how a golf course development happens. The golf course gets planned, but the residential areas get planned later. And so this is what it looks like now. And so you can see that there are areas that were at some point shown to be part of the golf course that have been heavily developed, in much greater density than what we've proposed. And I just did a time sequence of how these little fingers get developed. This is typical ways that residential areas are developed in an overall master golf course community. Our parcel was proposed in 2005, so it has been for nearly 20 years set apart as a development parcel. And then we had the recession that happened, so many of the developments came later. But it was done in this sequential kind of way, and this is very typical of how that's done. But as we have submitted here, our density is very similar to the density to the west, which is 1 unit per acre, and we're at 0.82 units per acre versus other areas that are 3 to 6 units per acre to the east of us. So we're very low density in comparison. So again, this is the existing development, how it was originally platted and approved as unzoned, and then the OR zoning came much later, just in the last few years. But the main difference that you can see between the proposals is this is not the same plan that was considered by the city of Fairhope. So we pulled the road way up. We're not encroaching into the fairway buffers in any way, move the roads and the houses closer together. And then I wanted to just demonstrate existing development that has already occurred in Lakewood and that people are accustomed to living on fairways and accept that risk, and they understand it, and they actually enjoy the views of the fairway. And then I also wanted to show that not only in Lakewood, but also in Rock Creek, which is in Montrose, we have an identical situation where we have 2 fairways with development right in between. And what I did was I prepared an analysis by overlaying our development on top of the existing development. And I lined up the fairway westerly boundary lines in the hole, and then I also lined up our road. So it's all at the same scale, and you can see that our buffers that we're providing are much greater than what is already provided in existing golf course communities in Rock Creek, as well as Lakewood. And so we are exceeding what other golf courses have in the exact same condition. This is what that looks like. And it is an acceptable form of development.
Okay, all right. Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Yes. So those were the main things that I wanted to hit on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes.
Just very brief.
Yes.
Do you want to come to the podium?
You come to the mic, please, and state your name.
Yes, sir. My name is Marshall Gardner, and I'm here representing the Retirement Systems of Alabama. We have available to give a very brief presentation one of the leading, if not the leading, golf course architect in the country, Dr. Michael Hurdson.
Yes, and we will get to him.
And I understand the time limits. We would very much appreciate an opportunity to have Dr. Hurdson make a very brief presentation. This is an important project from my client's standpoint, and we would like the opportunity to be heard. I know there's been a lot of opposition, but I think Dr. Hurdson, who was even cited by the expert hired by the opposition as the renowned golf course architect expert. So I would ask to indulge your patience to let Dr. Hurdson make a brief presentation.
Okay, I think we have him.
Yes, I'm just to let you make you aware, we have 7 people signed up, and actually Mr. Gardner here is actually the second person on the list.
We have him signed up already, set up there. We have him to go on, yeah. Did you want to say any more?
Yes, sir. I would just say, because I may not get a chance to speak again, what I'd like the commission to keep in mind is, I understand growth is a hot topic in Baldwin County. It's controversial. What RSA is proposing to do is build 6 houses on 7.2 acres. That's it. There's not going to be increased traffic congestion. We have jumped through every hoop that we've been asked to jump through. We've got 2 of the leading golf course architects in the country opining that this development is every bit as safe, if not safer, than other developments along golf courses. And I would finally point out that I think that 2 of the people who will speak in opposition live along the Lakewood Golf Course, one on Fairway 2 and one on Fairway 3. And perhaps some of this opposition stems from the fact that their view would be of the houses instead of that buffer area. But RSA is a property owner, and they have tried to comply with every regulation this county has to put 6 houses on 7 acres. And I very much appreciate your time and your courtesy in letting me speak.
Thank you. Who's next?
Yes, sir. Next we have signed up is Tracy Frost.
Alden.
Okay. Is he ready?
It's the golf expert.
Mr. Hurdson, you should be unmuted and should be able to speak.
Okay. All right. Yes.
Involvement, as well as what my conclusions are in this project. I was first contacted by a resident in that particular area by the name of Tracy Frost. And Tracy asked me to take a look at a plan for the development that was going to happen in the neighborhood where she lives and to give some input on that. And she sent it to me and I looked at it and then I wrote her back. And then shortly afterwards, Mr. Clyde Johnston, who I've known for a while, contacted me and started to tell me about the project. I said, Clyde, I've already looked at that plan and I thought it was a pretty doggone safe plan. And he said, well, let me send you some information to include my report plus my drawing. I looked at those and I said, yep, I'm even more convinced now that that's the situation. So at that point he said, would you write a letter to Mr. Marshall? And I said, if I'm invited by Mr. Marshall or by Mr. Gardner to write the letter, I'd be happy to do that, which in fact happened. I wrote 2 letters to Marshall Gardner. One was on the 1st of May and then later on the 21st of June to update based on new information that we had that received and supplementary reports from that. And in both cases, I believe that those house lots, those 6 proposed properties between holes 2 and 3 on the Azalea course at Lakewood are more than reasonably safe. I believe that I would feel very comfortable buying one myself if I were there. I do believe that Mr. Tanner may have incorrectly used my safety planning guidelines in his report and to overestimate that area that the errant golf balls could potentially land. I think they overestimated the number of errant balls that would land there. And I strongly disagree that trees are not an effective buffer to golf balls. So based on all of those, my conclusions are that based on the current GMC plan dated the 30th of June that allow for the adjusted the roadways, move the bunkers on the golf holes, plans to build a new green on number 2, plus putting some additional planting, plus save the trees that are already there. Now, this development is safe as any.
Your time's up.
In 50 years of experience.
Your time's up.
I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. All right, thank you. Next.
Okay, yes, sir. Ms. Tracy Frost.
Yeah, are you gonna speak for the group or are you speaking individually?
I'm speaking for the group.
Okay, okay.
Good morning.
You will get 8 minutes just like the other one person did too. Thank you.
I think when she finished, it was 9.08.
9, okay, all right. Well, it was in
I
between.
would quickly like to just say that my name is Tracy Frost. I live in Lakewood, number 2. I am who Mr. Gardner referenced, as well as Dr. Hurdson. The houses being built out there, I would look at them, that would be fine. What I don't want to have to do is I don't want my property values, I don't want them going down when mitigation netting has to be put up. I know that you had a data dump on Friday evening, and so our expert, who is not a golf course designer, and this is very important, he is an expert in golf ball trajectory, and he works as an expert witness. He works with clients to stop this type of thing from happening. So he has a very different perspective. So he's not just looking at making a nice, beautiful course. He did a report, and I just got it last night, that I will give to all of you. But the bottom line is, no matter how they modify this, how they change it, that piece of property is simply too narrow. I also have a presentation, and I want to go through this very quickly with you for the sake of time. The rezoning request from OR, this property has been used as a fairway buffer since 1947. It was designed by a professional golf course architect to serve the purpose that it serves. And trust me, it serves it. I have a front row seat. We see hundreds of balls going in there. I see golfers going in to retrieve them. I see them playing out of it. Now, granted, they make some modifications. You may shift it a little bit, but I'm going to show you a picture of almost 1,200 golf balls that one person has collected since it started 3 years ago. That doesn't count my neighbor behind me who's gotten some. It doesn't count the ones that are picked up. So it's just simply too narrow. The PRD request is more of an open variance that they're asking for, and it's to force this development on a sliver of property. And that is where this comes to an end. They can widen the road, and that's great. And what they've done is they've reduced the setbacks. And I don't really believe that they think it's completely safe, because in GMC's report, when they talk about in response to the safety concerns raised and talking about getting expert opinions, they go on to say that the recommended fairway buffers have been incorporated along the perimeter of the site. Well, they're not the fairway buffer sizes that they recommend. They go on to say, which will further preserve the existing trees while providing appropriate distance from golfing activities. Homes will be carefully tucked into lots around existing trees and sited across from each other to minimize impacts and create protected social space in front yards. If I'm not wrong, the front yard space they're saying is 12 feet. So does that mean these families and their friends have to gather in 12 feet to stay protected because of the potential impact from the back? The proposals that you've already seen, this Matthew took you through, I apologize, my mouth is getting dry. They very appropriately denied it, and the county did as well. And another thing I would like to say is, Ms. Curry mentioned that staff is the experts on the zoning ordinance. They are, but they left large caveats in there concerning safety, saying they are not those experts. In general, this is like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't meet the zoning factors, it doesn't comply with the master plan, and it is not safe. And here's a reality check. Those golf balls, she's talked a lot about there's similar properties out there. There are not. This piece of property is aligned with play in two separate directions with housing that would be on the right. The reason that's a problem is that over 80% of golfers have a problem with a slice. And 90% of those golfers are right-handed, which means large numbers land there. We already know that. Dr. Hurdson, who is an expert, and you'll hear Ken Tanner speak in just a moment, he does rely heavily on his information for his expert analysis. And even Dr. Hurdson says since the 70s, golf courses have become more closely integrated with housing developments, and with that come an increased number of lawsuits by adjacent property owners involving errant golf balls. This has caused a prudent designer to widen the buffer area or spatial separation where practical. So they're not talking about making it wider because of the advancements in equipment. They're not even talking about making it more narrow. They're talking about putting people in harm's way. That's not what Baldwin County is all about. It's not part of the mission statement. I'll go on further that Dr. Hurdson said that he felt like Mr. Tanner misinterpreted his corridors. But this is actually an excerpt out of his book that says 200-foot minimum setback. So it's not a misinterpretation. What's even further concerning, if you look at this diagram, the red is 175 feet, which is what Mr. Johnson had recommended originally. Then Mr. Tanner put Dr. Herdson's 200 corridor on that diagram. Dr. Herdson goes on to say if there's going to be a structure outside that, you need to add an additional 50 feet on either side. If you try and do that, where are you going to put houses safely? This is a picture that I wanted to share with you that shows the golf balls that are collected by one person. And, I feel like we're being sold, is there an acceptable amount of risk versus a false sense of security? There is some amount of risk. I live on a golf course, but my house is built 60 feet from the fairway. I still get golf balls there, but I'm also on the left side. And Dr. Herdson also says if you're on the right, more care should be given. So in his statement to, I believe to Mr. Gardner, he said, I further believe that the buyers of those 6 properties will have thoughtfully and personally balanced the benefits of living on a golf course against the potential risk of errant golf balls. He also says in his book, there is a false notion, in my opinion, that if a golf course was there first, then anyone who buys or uses adjacent land should know the danger associated with golf courses and errant golf balls, somehow absolving the golf course management, architect, golfers from responsibility for damages, injuries caused by errant golf balls. So I'm finding their expert witnesses are kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth. And I haven't really put a lot of credence into Mr. Johnson, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just that he's worked on many projects for RSA. And in Dr. Herdson's last detail, he said that when he modifies T box number 2, so I'm assuming he's already been given the job if this is approved. So why wouldn't he want this job? This is the tee shot dispersion that there was a lot of back and forth in the expert. And I'm not going to try and go through this. I'll let Ken Tanner do it. But basically, this is an illustration. I had mislabeled it as amateur golfer, male golfer, instead of amateur 3. So all that does, it doesn't change this. It's a specific handicap. They're high handicap, which is very representative of Lakewood. But based on his expert, and he is a mathematician, he uses physics and statistics and research. For these 2 areas annually, it would be over 740 golf balls. And he can explain that a little more. And I'll leave you with this. Errant shots are dangerous. And they're telling you that trees serve a great purpose and they may slow it down. But this picture of the roofer is from South Carolina. A gentleman was on the roof. A golf ball was hit on adjacent property, went through it, hit him in the back of the head. Hit him in the back of the head, and he has permanent brain damage. So, for all of those reasons, we request that you deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next.
Yes, sir, we have Mr. Thomas Pilcher.
Thank you all for letting me be here. Can everybody hear me, first off? Thank you for being here.
State your name, please.
My name is Thomas Pilcher.
Okay.
I appreciate you all. I've got 3 things that I want to get to, and I'm going to try to get to them as quick as I can. The first thing
You got 3 minutes.
Yes, sir, I appreciate it. If you look at the map, you'll see, and I appreciate that they've made attempts, because last time we were here, the right-of-way was not big enough for safety vehicles. This time it is. They've increased it to 20 feet. But the issue with that, and why I always felt like that right-of-way was so important, is this, because that plan is not safe. Because for them to put the house site on a 14-foot right-of-way meant they moved the houses further away from the golf course. That's why they wanted a 14-foot right-of-way. They left it further away from the golf course. Now they've put it at 20-foot. Well, what does that mean? That means the houses are now closer to the golf course, which brings into effect the risk of further golf balls hitting them. So that was always the issue. It wasn't, hey, this road is too short. That was an issue. but why is it too short? What's the reason they came and put it at 14 foot? They put it at 14 foot to make it safer from golf balls, but at less risk for others. Now, it's safer because people can come through and reach it, or your fire trucks can get there, but the golf balls can hit it, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is this. This property, when we're talking about these properties, what we're talking about is not just the homeowners. We're talking about the people that are there and the people that are coming to that house as well. For instance, yard guys. What's going to happen one day when the yard guy's in there? These houses are, as Mr. Frost said, they're carefully tucked behind trees. Well, the yard guy's out in the middle of the yard cutting. He's probably got his earphones on. He's pushing his lawnmower. What happens if a golf ball hits him? Somebody's going to get sued. You guys are probably going to get sued. The county's going to get sued. Everybody's going to get sued. And then I realize I got 40 seconds. I'm trying to do this real quick. This property is now, the request that they're trying to do on this is a PRD, and I want to make this real quick. Planned residential development is an open variance in a way. It allows you guys to allow them to use their property in a specific manner that's outside of what ordinarily it would be used. It's outside of how they would ordinarily use it. And in order to do that, they give up some things and they get some things back. All right? So as I leave you, because I know I got 9 seconds, I want you to look through and see in their plan what they've given up. What have they given up? There's nothing in there that they've given up, I can tell you. The only thing that they've given up, that they say they've given up, is trees.
Time's up.
And they're not going to cut those trees down. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Rob?
Yes, sir. We have Miss Carol Sullivan. Sorry.
Good morning. My name's Carol Sullivan.
Gotcha.
My wife and I reside at 513 Owl's Nest Place, just east of the tee box on Azalea Hole number 3. We're Lakewood members and golfers. Lakewood members and golfers were not consulted about this proposal. I think that's important for y'all to know. Only 2 or 3 people in Montgomery made that decision. I'm a lawyer, and I practiced in Mobile and Baldwin County for more than 40 years. Please register our strong objection to the latest application of RSA for rezoning. A very similar plan by RSA was struck down by the Fairhope P&Z twice. 7-1. The road was said to be unsafe, being wedged between 2 fairways, narrow land between 2 fairways, an unsafe road. The commissioners there talked about golf balls blasting out car windows and injuring children playing outside. Success was also not had by the RSA on appeals to the Fairhope City Council and also in Baldwin County Circuit Court where they took it. And they dismissed both of those. But they went to those 2 forums too, and I think it's important to point out that they went to the Fairhope City Council, they were at the Fairhope P&Z twice, and they were in Baldwin County Circuit Court once. The most recent application for rezoning was rejected 5-2 by the Baldwin County P&Z. That was just 2 months ago. You are the 5th governmental body being asked to approve this residential development. RSA did not get its wish granted by the other 4, so they're coming to you now. While the most recent application contains 6 houses, as opposed to 10 presented before. The number of houses is beside the point because of this narrow strip of land between these 2 fairways. Regardless of the number of houses, the proposed road remains dangerous. RSA's golf architect, Clyde Johnson, who is biased because 20% of his work and income comes from RSA, refers to the 6 home sites in his 4-page report and his recently filed 2-page report. He's got 6 pages.
Your time is up. 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Let me just finish by saying...
Finish your sentence.
RSA plans runs contrary to the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Baldwin County. We urge you to deny the application to rezone this golf course property. It should remain outdoor recreation consistent with its character since 1947. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any?
Yes, sir. We have Ms. Tracy Gamble, please.
Tracy, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I need less this time. Thank you. Tracy Gamble, 32054 Bartell Street, Alberta, Alabama. I'm not in this planning district, but I am in Baldwin County. All I have to say is that if approved, this PRD, someone will need to explain to the boards of adjustment why developers are allowed to throw setbacks to the wind while expecting individual citizens to comply with strict adherence unless it is a hardship of the land. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, that's it.
One more. We have Jim Edens.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Jim Edens, and I live at 517 Owl's Nest Place. I'm on the hole number 3 tee box. So I have a bird's eye view of what happens every day. I kind of feel like we've become the battle of the engineers. I've gone to all these meetings, and it's like, let's get an engineer, and then we'll get one to fight that engineer, and this opinion is right and wrong, so that's kind of what it's turned into. I live there. I have a porch that overlooks the golf course. I see what happens every single day. I spend a lot of time on my porch. I'm also a golfer. I've been in this area quite a few times, and I'm a pretty good golfer. Twice in the last month, I've hit balls inside of the fenced area where the houses would be. One on a number 3, pretty crappy tee shot that I hit way right, and the other was a second shot on number 2 where I hit an iron shot, ricocheted off a tree and went over the fence in that regard, okay? So I find it a little bit comical that it's all about speculation and dispersion patterns and how many will do this, when all of us who live there, and there's many of us in the room here, see it every day. You see, I've seen the individual who walks over there and gathers those balls that represent the 1,200 that have been collected in that area. Every time I'm in that area, I see balls there. So I just would ask that you kind of listen to the residents who live there. Do we want other houses over there? Not necessarily, because that wasn't exactly what RSA told us when they sold us those homes. What was the thing was in our brochure? We'll sit on our porches and sip tea and enjoy the majestic oaks for years to come. That's exactly what was in the brochure. Kind of doesn't feel that way anymore, does it? But anyway, I just want you to understand that we live there, we see it. Again, other than the one engineer that talked with Tracy, none of us have been consulted by RSA. They've never had a meeting where they spoke with any of us. They've never got our opinions. They've never got our observations. The engineers have not contacted. I'm the HOA president. They've not contacted any of us for our opinions or observations. They've not cared to look at the 1,200 golf balls. It's basically, my opinion is it's safe. Well, we live there. We see what happens every day. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Does anyone else like to speak for or against this issue before I close this public hearing?
I think Ken Tanner, our business expert, is on WebEx or sign.
Oh, okay.
I'm not.
He did, okay.
I believe Mr. Tanner's on there.
The sidebar talk, we can't hear us. Come tell, what do you need?
So the concern, there was an intent to sign in Ken Tanner, who is on the WebEx, and
Okay.
it may have been done on the top of Tracy's sheet. I'm not 100% sure, but he is on here, and I believe Mr. Tanner should be unmuted. And
Okay, we'll hear from him then. You have 3 minutes, sir.
He's not unmuted.
We can't hear you.
You're muted or something.
Are you muted?
We can't hear.
We don't have, you don't have your, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
We got you now.
Great.
You got 3
Well,
minutes.
thanks very much for this opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Ken Tanner, and unlike the golf course architects, I'm not a golf course architect. I'm a parent golf course expert. I'm coming to you from Canada, so you might detect a little bit of an accent on the west coast of Vancouver. And in summary, I have to say I disagree with you that project will be safe. I feel that there's not enough space between the two golf holes to create enough safety for the residents that are proposed to be built there. It's been my experience through consultation with many businesses and residents in the U.S., Canada, Britain, Australia, that there are an unacceptable number of parent golf ball problems with properties that are adjoining to golf courses. And this has led to many damages and lawsuits throughout the years. And in the letter that you should receive, Tracy Frost, where I go into a little bit more detail of why that's the case. But over the last 20 years, I've mitigated many parent golf ball issues, and using my background in physics and mathematics. And in particular, what I've used is statistics to calculate probabilities of the number of golf balls one would expect to land on a particular area. And the best database out there is the database of golf provided by Mark Brody, Dr. Mark Brody. Over 55,000 shots for the full spectrum of golfing abilities. And what Brody did was he came up with measured samples. He came up with the average scatter of golf shots of golf ability. And I used these measures probabilities to estimate using statistical analysis. And you'll find in the document, in my report as well, diagram shows the scatter plot, which is just an illustration of potential scattering of golf balls. And that's just one sample. But Brody came up with statistical measures of scattering. And from that, you can use basic standard statistical analysis to determine that it's very likely that 3.5% of male golfers will land somewhere onto the buffer area, which is the book site, and 2.4% will land on from hole number 2. And to put 3.5% risk.
Mr. Turner, your time is up.
You had a 3.5% risk of
Your time is up, Mr. Turner.
car accident.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I said your time is up. You had 3 minutes. Your time is up.
All right, if I just finish my last statement, a 3.5% risk of being in a car accident would mean 1 in every 29 times you get in a car, you're going to have an accident. And the risk of golf balls landing onto this property are extreme. And I really encourage the commission to
Thank you so very much. All right. Is there anyone else want here to speak for or against this? Okay. All right. You got 3 minutes.
And I'll have less than that.
Just a couple of quick corrections. Again, Melissa Curry with GMC. As you can see on this slide here, there was not a data dump done on Friday. We just increased the pavement width to 20, and the slide there shows that there's been no movement of the houses. There's been no changes. The 200-foot buffer that's been talked about is provided. That's in the 175-foot original buffer plus the 25-foot setback. So we do have the 200-foot buffer as mentioned. If you could pull up our presentation, Matthew, really quickly. The very last two slides, we showed where Mr. Tanner incorrectly placed the scatter plots he references for Brody, and we had them replaced with the correct T hole and location. And this is representative of 500 high handicap golfers, which is not the typical golfer at Lakewood, and the number of golf balls that have even the potential of coming into the buffer area is very small. Other things that were stated, none of the oaks on this site are proposed to be removed. As previously mentioned, only 2 pine trees are proposed to be removed. And then again, I want to point out that they keep referring to this as such a narrow piece of property that is unprecedented. This is wider than the parcel at the Rock Creek Golf Course that has the identical setup, and those houses would be inside the fairway if it were done in the same way.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you once again. I just want to point out that to follow up on what Melissa said, Mr. Brody, when he did those scatter plots, it shows all these golf balls in that property, did not scale it properly. He did not position it properly. When Mr. Johnson used an AutoCAD program to properly scale that plot and to properly position it, there are very few golf balls that intrude into the property and even less into the buffer area. I would also point out, and just remind everyone once again, what RSA is proposing to do is put 6 houses on 7.2 acres of property. This plan is not the same plan that was presented to Fairhope. The road's been repositioned. We have jumped through every hoop we can jump through. This is a safe development, and we respectfully request that the County Commission approve and give RSA the same rights that other property owners, because RSA is simply, it's the Retirement Systems of Alabama. It's retired teachers, firefighters, public safety employees. They manage the pension for those people. This is not some big greedy corporation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else like to speak for or against this issue? Come forward. You got 3 minutes, and that's it. Hurry up.
What I would like to bring to your attention, if we don't have the time, I've probably got 40 videos minimum of golfers going in and out of the area. But they have built, as we were saying, it's not working, Matthew. There we go. They built on the perimeter of in a fairway buffer on the other course at Lakewood. There's 2. This was done about 4 years ago. Golf balls were going into this, and it's very hard to see on there. I put the yellow arrows, but they've already had to put netting up, and I don't know if anyone was hurt, but obviously what they're telling you that they're expertly designing these so that this won't happen is wrong. It has happened. It's happened now. These fences have had to be put up, and if you had to do that in that lot, then you are impacting not just the property along Woodland Drive, all of Owl's Nest, and it's not right. And the scatter plot for Dr. Brody, if Mr. Tanner had time to take you through it, he could explain everything a little bit differently than what you're getting. All of these are videos. This is another shot that I would like to comment on. They're saying that everything is the same. These fairways are apples and oranges with the comparisons. And even the one that they're referring to at Rock Creek, there are double sets of houses with the road in the center. So I find it highly unlikely it is the same size. they had to force request through a PRD to get just the 6 houses in there. And the other thing about that PRD is they talk about the common space and all this additional green space having 35% versus the required 20. Half of it being usable, I wouldn't put my child or a pet out in that common space because I see what happens every single day. So again, I respectfully ask that you guys look at this, use not only the factors of the zoning ordinance, but your common sense and deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, this public hearing is closed. Commissioners, you have any questions?
I'd like to ask Matthew a question, if you don't mind, Matthew. I don't know what the commission's going to vote or how they're going to vote, but hypothetical, if we go back, say Fairhope comes later and says, okay, we want 1.5 miles, regardless how our decision is today, will that affect anything?
No.
I just want to make sure for my information, for my education.
So the only difference, our decision was still sets the zoning, does not impact, they would hear a public hearing for any future subdivision that would occur if Fairhope were to exercise anything outside the corporate limits. But our zoning will govern what can take place in that subdivision.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Any other questions of Matthew before we proceed? All right. There's no other commissioners. Do I hear a motion for case number PRD 23-1?
Commissioner, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we deny case number PRD 23-1.
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner McKenzie, seconded by Commissioner Ball, to deny case number PDR 23-1. Any further discussion? All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. So it fails.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, we would normally pause and give the applicant an opportunity to withdraw their rezoning case if they so desire. And we pause to defer to the applicant as to whether they would like a vote on the zoning case or to request withdrawal.
We would like to vote on the zoning case.
Okay.
As a reminder, zoning case is case Z23-8.
All right,
so we've already had the public hearing because it was for both of them.
So,
okay.
So, all right. All right, so then they are withdrawing, correct?
They would like it to go for a vote.
Oh, they want to go forward?
So
okay.
We need a motion, a second, and a vote.
Okay. All right, commissioners.
Make a motion to deny.
I need a motion for case number...
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny.
And I'll second it.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Ball, seconded by Commissioner Underwood to deny case number Z23-8. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion failed. I mean, it passed. Yes, it passed. Excuse me. Yeah. It was presented in the denial.
Rezoning failed.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you. Next, other staff recommendations.
Yes, so other staff recommendations, we moved out of the consent under planning and zoning, CR2 through CR8, and we'll address those 7 items now.
If you don't mind, Roger, let's let these...
Just hold up just a second for the ones getting out.
I don't know if she would she be? Oh, okay.
Commissioners, I guess we get ready for CR2 to CR8.
Yes, first up would be building.
I was going to ask, would y'all like to do these?
I think we're waiting on, if I'm not mistaken, Hope Hicks is going to join in.
Oh, okay.
That's correct. I've reached out to Ms. Hicks to just confirm she's logging back in here.
We're waiting on Ms. Hicks to get on the phone.
Hope confirmed that she's logging in right now.
Would by chance we want to move on to the other three items of action and then come back to the?
Yeah, we can, I guess we can, yeah. Oh, wait a minute,
Since we're still,
She's on.
she's on now.
okay.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning? Doing good?
I'm good. How are you guys?
All right. Okay. Well, my question was to you, commissioners, do y'all want to just group this, or do y'all want to vote on each one of them separately?
I'm fine to group them.
I think we can group them.
Anybody have any problem with that? If not, we think they're all the same, basically the same, you know.
I'm okay with it.
You all right with it?
You can group it.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, then, we'll do that. All right, Matthew. All right, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We don't have any formal presentation on this one other than to note that there were two substitutes, and that was to correct a small wording for the town of Loxley and the town of Spanish Fork to clarify what type of subdivisions they will be regulating within their planning jurisdiction. And I've talked to both of those municipalities about that change. So I believe we're just prepared to accept a motion to adopt the accompanying resolution for individually for CR2 through CR8, and I guess one motion and second.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion that we approve items CR2 through CR8 to approve the agreements between.
Okay.
Second.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Underwood, seconded by Commissioner Ball to approve item number CR2 and CR8.
Through CR.
2, right?
All of them, yeah. CR2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
All right. Oh, all of them, okay. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Matthew a question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
With the law going into effect 2 years ago, and what happens in a few minutes, what will happen if somebody wants to come back, like Fair Oak, because they didn't get time to get on the agenda, but they're going to come back and want something, will they be able to do this from whoever from now on? Whatever cities that that's not in this agreement.
Sure. So it is an important question, and something to clarify here is that when the law went into effect 2 years ago, it actually didn't change anything immediately from a practical perspective in terms of our relationship with the municipalities and their regulation of subdivision and building permits. It kept everything in place. If we wanted to change anything, we had to give notice. The county commission gave notice, but included in that caveat, it had to be a 2-year notice, included in that a caveat that they would consider agreements from the municipalities, which really brought us to today. So in the case with City of Fairhope that they currently have not brought in an agreement, or any of the municipalities who are not here with an agreement today, certainly at some point in the future, under the law, they have the ability to come and request an agreement to this body at some point in the future.
Thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate that. I just think that the public needs to be aware of that, and I just want you, especially the ones that live in the unincorporated areas. But thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, and all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I oppose.
Let the record show that Commissioner McKenzie voted no. Thank you. Hope, thank you. Everything we've done here is what was in the letter of the law. We have not done anything outside what was not provided in that bill. It said we could negotiate with them, and a mile and a half was the largest jurisdiction, and that is what is in all what we've approved. So everything we have done, we have abided by what is in the legislation that was approved. Just to let everybody let them know on that. Okay, Lex?
Yes, sir. Under ARPA, we have GA1, which is a resolution allocation of ARPA funds to the City of Loxley water capacity improvements.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll second it.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Ball, seconded by Commissioner Underwood. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it.
Yes, sir. We have one more ARPA action. It's GA2, which is repealing and rescinding the allocation of ARPA funds and terminating the IA agreement with the PH&G Architects for the architecture services of the Bay Minette Courthouse outdoor atrium.
I'll make a motion, we approve item GA2.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Underwood, seconded by Commissioner McKenzie, approve item GA2. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. How's that? Next.
Okay, yes, sir. On the addenda, we have removed HA1 and we have HA2, which is the ACCA Legislative Committee nominee for.
Make a motion, we approve HA2.
I'll second it.
All right, got a motion made by Commissioner Ball, seconded by Commissioner Underwood to approve item number HA2, which is our appointment to the legislative representative on the legislative committee. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. All right, next.
Okay, Commissioner requests.
Commissioners?
I don't have any.
No requests? Okay. All right. All right, no senior staff?
The senior staff was taken care of earlier.
All right, you got that. County Attorney's report? None?
No report, sir. Thank you.
All right. Public comments? Any public comments? Hearing none. Press questions? Hearing none. Commissioner comments?
You start down that way today.
Commissioner Underwood?
I don't have any today.
Okay. Commissioner McKenzie?
I just want to say, let's just keep the county employee that had a terrible accident in our prayers, and hopefully he recovers, and thank you for the staff, everybody that put this together, so thank y'all.
Let's reiterate prayers for the family regarding the highway incident with the dump truck, and also thanks to the staff for putting this together, and especially Matthew, thank you again for awesome presentations with planning and zoning. That right there, for anybody that doesn't even know, learns every single time you sit in here, even myself. So even though it didn't go that way, the staff's approval, it still was a very well put together presentation. And I just wanted to thank you and your staff for working real hard on these controversial issues and making it black and white for everybody that's sitting in this room. So I appreciate that. That's it.
All right. I want to go ahead and thank the staff for getting all of this put together, and and planning. Thank y'all. The presentation that you made today on this was outstanding, and I think everybody that was here could understand it, and you know, and the planning commission, you know, everyone, you know, it wasn't an easy decision for it to be made. So I just want to thank everyone for doing that. And again, I want to also remember the truck driver that was in a bad accident on the causeway. I hope he gets better. And for him and his family, you know, to keep him in prayers. If there's no more business come before the county commission, do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, been a motion made by Commissioner Underwood, seconded by Commissioner Ball to adjourn. We're adjourned at 11:24. Thank you.